Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. It's 2:01. If you are here for episode number 2 of the Evidence Show, the most riveting hour in evidence management on Thursdays, every other Thursday, I can promise you that. We're going to talk about something that is really interesting and really compelling, and it's important for us as evidence managers and evidence custodians to understand today. And I've had the benefit of through this pandemic, uh, getting acquainted with James Nally at the Orange County Sheriff's Office, and we've been working together on some past trainings, and we look forward to working together on future trainings. But James has got a really deep background in dealing with fentanyl, and that's what we're going to talk about today. But I shouldn't have given that away so quickly because I want to again point people to that evidence manager community forum. We talked about that just a little bit ago. Would encourage people to check that out and join. It's a great resource. Uh, if you're curious about what we do here at the Evidence Management Institute, I would invite you to come to our website, evidencemanagement.com. There are some resources there that hopefully will be of benefit to you. I know that we've put our standards and best practices online. There's also a client side where if you want to look at resources that we talk about, if you can't find them directly on our site, chances are they're on that client site. We just put some things kind of behind the wall to keep it from just open view for the general public. But hopefully you'll be able to find stuff there. If you're looking for past episodes of this show or past trainings that we've done online, you can find those on the website as well. And every week I like to mention how we're able to do this, how we're able to pay the bills and get things done, especially when we're not going out and training people. Uh, but we've got a great partnership with Tracker Products. They're an evidence management software company. And because of our partnership with Tracker, we're able to do what we do. So I would encourage you to check them out at trackerproducts.com. This is where I should have started the conversation about what we're talking about today. This is the one about fentanyl. And the goal here is to teach you in an hour or to talk in an hour about what every evidence room, what every evidence custodian needs to know about fentanyl. Uh, I can tell you that I have not, I don't have a lot of expertise in fentanyl. I have taught about it in class, but what I teach has come from what I've learned from other people about fentanyl. We were fortunate at our agency. I retired right as this thing was kind of kicking off as a huge problem with respect to law enforcement and property rooms. So I'm going to introduce our two guests today. They're both from beautiful Orange County, California. Both work for Orange County and are one works for the sheriff's office directly. But James Nally, you might remember James from our past training episodes. He also does evidence training, and when there's not a pandemic going on. But James, you want to talk? Just introduce yourself real quick, and then we'll introduce
Yeah,
Brian.
absolutely. Absolutely. I have a slide in my presentation too that just gives a little background, but I hate to show that slide because I'm here, so I'm just talking about it. Um, James Nally here. A lot of folks know me already from, like Sean said, our training class in California. It's Chain of Custody. The website is chainofcustodypro.com, and basically we just started that as a necessity because we realize that California law is complex. There's a lot of things that we have to deal with in California that not every other state, is experiencing all the time. So, things like firearm laws, legislation on rape, or I should say sexual assault evidence. The list goes on, legalizing marijuana, et cetera, et cetera. So fentanyl is just another one of those things that we have to deal with in our unit. And unfortunately, it kind of blew up in Orange County, and that's kind of where we are today with knowing so much about it only because it happened in our backyard. So
Awesome.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Sean, very much for allowing me to come in and kind of give some of my expertise on this subject because it's passionate and dear to my heart.
Absolutely, and I am absolutely happy to have you on every time that you are here. I'll also introduce Brian Quigley. Brian Quigley is a safety manager that is attached to the Orange County Sheriff's Office. He works directly for Orange County. Brian, you want to tell us a little bit about you?
Of course. My name is Brian Quigley. I'm the safety specialist currently assigned to the Orange County Sheriff's Department. My role is pretty much to provide information and guidance to the Orange County Sheriff's Department in regards to safety-related questions, programs, and to provide guidance on Cal OSHA related material. As far as my background, I got my start in law enforcement back in '06 for the Orange County Sheriff's Department, and I moved up from their dispatch office to a non-sworn custody position, and then took on a sworn position as a deputy probation officer in Riverside County, where I stayed for another 6 years before coming back to Orange County as a safety specialist. So I have had plenty of experience taking 911 calls, dealing with people in the jail, arresting people in the field, collecting evidence, including fentanyl, and then now dealing with the safety side of the house. So,
Awesome.
Thank you for the invite.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for being here. I think you're going to be able to provide us with a perspective and some expertise that we don't have and that people need to hear. So I appreciate you being here. Just a couple of really quick kind of housekeeping items before I switch presenters and make James the presenter for his part of the presentation. But if you have questions, when questions come up, if you've got questions that you want to ask, if there's anything you're curious about, there's a little question window at the bottom of your screen. And if you will type those questions in there, I will try to facilitate questions and then just kind of throw them out to James and Brian as we go. Typically what we do the first hour, we try to do training the first hour, and then we will cut it off, but we will answer questions. I can stay here as long as there is time available, but we'll work in questions and answers as we go. But I'm going to switch this right now to, let's see. There are a lot of people to, there we go. James, I've switched it to you.
So
You
lucky.
should be able to take control. This
All
will be
right,
a little bit of
perfect.
an awkward handoff, but
Yeah, no worries, no worries. I can't see my screen, so I'm just winging it here. I can see our presentation though. So good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name's James Nelly, as we said before, and this is our fentanyl safety in the property room. So we just always like to remind people that the line staff is the foundation of a functioning evidence room, right? Oh, can you guys see my my screen?
I think it might just now be coming up, James.
Okay. Yeah, I just shared it, so hopefully you can see that now. Get rid of all this goofy stuff. All right. So here's just a, I'm not going to go through all my accolades here. I just wanted to kind of show you a few things that I've done in my ancient years in property evidence. Today we're going to be talking about fentanyl, as if there's not enough stuff to deal with in property evidence already, between the potential of loaded firearms, knives improperly packaged, needles, loaded needles, the list goes on and on, marijuana aspergillus. I mean, there's no question that it's just more, it gets more and more complex with the things that we deal with. But fentanyl has to rate up there towards the very top of the things that we handle. And the primary reason is it can kill you, right? So this is fentanyl.
James,
Can you see the screen? Sean, can you see the screen?
One second. I think I've made you the presenter twice because it's now.
Oh, okay. I'm double talking.
I don't see you.
Uh-oh.
Let me take it back for just a second.
Okay.
And then
I think I fixed it.
Now I'm going to change it again.
Okay.
This is the kind of high quality riveting show that that you've paid good money to see. So let's see if that worked, because you're on there twice and I'm not sure which one.
That's it. That's it. Oh,
Yeah.
How we
how we
doing
doing
now?
now?
Still on there.
Huh?
I don't see your screen. Are you sharing?
Let
Let
me
me
get rid of this.
this. Sharing.
It says waiting to see your screen, waiting to view your screen.
How about that?
There we go. Now we're cooking with gas. We
All
did that
right.
intentionally because what we wanted to
Yeah.
do was show you, the viewers at home, that that sometimes technology doesn't work the way you want it to. So there you go, James. Everything is up and running.
Well, this is a new experience for us, so hopefully we'll get this thing figured out sooner than later. But then back to fentanyl. This is fentanyl. This is it in its molecular structure. It doesn't look very menacing here, but let's get into it. And let's talk a little bit about what the problems are with fentanyl. So we're going to talk about what is fentanyl, give a little background, a little history, and talk to you specifically about how toxic the drug actually is. Next, we're going to talk about the proper methods for packaging and handling. And this actually starts in the field. So this is something you can relay to your officers as well. I'm hoping that everyone in this audience has at least heard about fentanyl, that they've at least had some form of training, because we've been seeing it come through since about 2016. So people say, oh, well, I haven't seen any fentanyl come through my evidence stream. Chances are your crime lab's probably not testing for it. So if that's the case, give your crime lab a ring and say, hey, are we testing for fentanyl now? And if so, I need to be aware of it so that I can take the proper precautions for it. We need to know how to stay safe in the property room, and that's all going to be about PPE and having proper procedures to keep us safe. And then Brian's going to come in towards the end and talk about naloxone, otherwise known as, and I misspelled naloxone, and I apologize for that, but it's otherwise known as Narcan. Narcan is the antidote for an opioid overdose, and that's super important for us, right? So let's talk a little bit about the history. Pharmaceutical grade fentanyl, which is a man-made synthetic opioid, was introduced in 1959 for the purpose of pain management. So it actually had a purpose, still does have a purpose, and that's why the pharmaceutical grade type of fentanyl is still used by medical staff today. Obviously, 1960s, it was introduced as Supplemase. So came out as a different name, and over the years, it's kind of found its way into the fentanyl based on the molecular structure of it. So analogs were developed shortly thereafter. Analogs are just a similar drug that has the same molecular structure, plus or minus a atom or whatever, and it has different levels of toxicity. So obviously, like carfentanil is going to have, we're going to talk about carfentanil. It's one of the most deadliest opioids, but transdermal patch was created in the mid-1990s, and again, it became widely used for the end of life. So hospice patients and terminally ill patients were using that as pain medication. And obviously, it was a lot more potent than its predecessor, morphine. All right. So and one of the more key topics is that it was the first pain medication that used transdermal delivery. So for those of you that don't know exactly what transdermal means, it means that it can absorb through the skin, which is a big problem for us in the units too, right? Let's talk about illicit fentanyl and where it's coming from and the toxicity levels of it and so forth. So 1979, the illicit manufacture of fentanyl began from the prescription transdermal patches. There was also lollipops and nasal spray. So they were extracting the narcotic component of that and putting it into illicit drugs. Okay, so the biggest thing that I want to emphasize on fentanyl, and one of the reasons why it is so toxic and so dangerous, is that it's super, super concentrated. It's super potent. So the doses are measured in micrograms rather than milligrams. We'll talk a little bit about that. So let's say we took a packet of sugar, right? Say a packet of Sweet and Low. I tear that bad boy open and you spill it out onto the table, right? Take your favorite credit card. That's 1 gram. Okay, so it's approximately 1 gram of sweet and low packet. So now you're going to take your favorite credit card and you're going to make 10 individually equal lines out of that. Okay, so each one of those lines is basically a dose. So if you were to say heroin, cocaine, and some of the other narcotics that come in powder format, you're going to have 1/10 of a gram is going to be 1 dose. Okay, now take a couple grains or granulars of that material, and that's a dose of fentanyl. So you can see how concentrated it is, and anything more than that would be a fatal overdose if it were taken. So just to give you an idea, it's about 50 to 100 times more powerful than morphine and 40 times more powerful than heroin. So you understand why we're having so many problems with it coming through our evidence stream. Some of the illegal analogs include carfentanil, which is extremely toxic, and we'll talk a little bit about carfentanil. Furil, Acryl, and Valeryl fentanyl, all of those are just analogs of fentanyl, and they all do the same thing, just with different levels of toxicity. Let's take a look at the lethal doses. So if you notice over here in the top left corner, that's a lethal dose of fentanyl next to the penny. Also below it, the ecstasy pills. Each one of those ecstasy pills has a lethal dose of fentanyl. So we're saying, well, I thought it was just powder format. Why is it in pills? We're seeing fentanyl come through in everything. Powder format, counterfeit prescription medications, even tar heroin, like you see on the top right-hand corner. And then if you look in the middle, you'll see a lethal dose of the left side would be your heroin, the middle is fentanyl, and the right side of it is carfentanil. And we'll talk about the toxicity levels of that. So for a second, let's talk about packaging, methods for packaging and handling, because that's where we live, right? That's the important stuff about what we have to do and how we have to ensure that we stay safe in our units. So packaging guidelines. Our agency has created some very specific packaging guidelines based on the fact that we had so much fentanyl coming in the very beginning. And how did we discover that we were getting fentanyl in our evidence room? Because honestly, it's a cutting agent, you know. So you got heroin, you've got methamphetamine, you got cocaine coming in with fentanyl in it. So it wasn't until our crime lab discovered that we had a rash of overdoses, and they started to take a little bit deeper look into the narcotics that were coming in from these coroner cases. And upon taking a look at these coroner cases and finding the narcotics there on scene, they identified different types of fentanyl that were coming in, which led to these massive overdoses, especially when the people manufacturing the drugs don't necessarily have a specific formula. It's kind of like trial and error for their recipes. So when our officers come in, first and foremost, we want to say that we're desperately hoping that all agencies have stopped field testing. It's just so incredibly dangerous to field test, you know, out there in the field and take a chance on your health and safety. So we've worked with the district attorney's office and the forensics community to forego field testing. I know the DA's office wanted to have that field test done, the NIC kit, the presumptive, so that it would help their probable cause in court. But it's just way too dangerous to do that in the field. So as our officers come in, now we require them to don 2 pairs of nitrile gloves. You say, well, can it be latex? The answer is no. Latex doesn't protect as well as nitrile gloves, and we're asking that they place 2 pairs of nitrile gloves on. Safety glasses, there's different levels and threat assessments for needing other PPE. Like obviously, if you go to a scene, people are down, people are out, there's obviously a lot of narcotics everywhere. You'd really want to just back out of that scene and let your contingency responders handle that, because it could be a mass a mass overdose of fentanyl. It could be a pill manufacturing facility, et cetera. So at least wear an N95 respirator and the gloves. All narcotics must be packaged in a Ziploc or heat seal bag. I'll show you examples of what we use to package the narcotics, and we just get in the habit of putting it all the same way. Some people have asked me, hey, is there fentanyl in marijuana? And actually we have seen fentanyl come in marijuana too. It's a little bit rare, but we do see it. So you want to make sure you treat all of the narcotics the same way, okay? So now the officer comes in, he's got his original packaging that he collected in the field. It could be all the different formats of how narcotics are packaged for sales or for possession. So you have bindles, right? Pieces of paper that are folded up with the narcotics inside. You could have balloons. You could have small baggies that the items in. We're going to call that the primary packaging, okay? So no matter how it comes in, we're going to call that primary, okay? And we're talking about narcotics that are coming into your unit that are under 400 grams, okay? So 400 grams or more, it's like kilo size or more, is a completely different process. All right, so we're talking about the small quantities that come in. So you have your primary packaging, you have your double gloves on, and your PPE. You want to put that into another sealed bag, another sealed plastic baggie. Now these can be Ziploc baggies, or the preferred method is a heat seal bag. Okay, so primary packaging goes into secondary packaging. You either seal with the Ziploc or you heat seal. The reason it's really important to, I think more important to use heat seal than Ziploc is, what do you do with a Ziploc baggie, right? Your mom's getting your lunch ready, your little kid getting your lunch, or you're a parent, you're getting your kids' lunch ready to go, put the sandwich in there, you start to seal the Ziploc. What do people typically tend to do? Put it up against their body and push the air out, right? When you push that air out, where's all the powder go? Right up in your face, right? Now you have an exposure. So it's always better, in my opinion, and as a standard, to heat seal, okay? You're just eliminating some of that risk. It's always good to, okay, so once you got your primary packaging and your secondary packaging, now you can take your secondary packaging and place that into your standard envelopes, or however you would store evidence at your shop. We like to put them in either the 6x9 or the 9x12 manila or craft style envelopes. Get that all sealed up with the initials, get it booked in, and it's always a good thing, or actually, if you know it's fentanyl or you suspect it to be fentanyl, make sure you either write on the outside, or if your agency has some fentanyl stickers, you'd want to place that on the property as well, next to your tag, your evidence tag, okay? So we're talking about 400 grams or more, including kilos. It must be placed, instead of doing, you can't obviously stuff 2 kilos into a manila envelope, right? So you should use a containment bucket. And again, I'm going to show you examples of containment bucket in the next slide. And then again, just we're reiterating, make sure you write on the envelope or on the bucket that you have potential fentanyl, okay? So here's exactly what I was talking about. You got your double nitrile gloves. You have your, I apologize, but I missed a step, really critical step. And I wanna go back and talk about that real quick. So once you take your primary packaging and you put your primary packaging into your secondary packaging and you seal that, just before you put that into your envelope, you definitely want to strip your outer layer of nitrile gloves. Remember at the beginning, we had talked about putting 2 pairs of nitrile gloves. And the reason for that is any residue that was on your primary packaging, we don't want to contaminate the outside of our evidence with any residual or residue from your original packaging. So once again, primary packaging goes into your secondary packaging, heat seal or Ziploc with a seal on top of that. And just before you take your secondary packaging and place it into your evidence envelope, strip the outer layer gloves and dispose of those immediately, okay? Now you have your evidence, you're all booked in, you're ready to go. Here's just an example of what I was talking about. Where there's examples of bindles, baggies, balloons, narcotics, including prescription medication, You have a syringe there, and then there's your either your red line bags or your heat sealer. Okay. So again, for fentanyl or narcotics coming in over 400 grams, you definitely want to use something a little more robust, like heavier duty bags, and then of course putting it into a containment bucket where you would seal it. Okay. Any questions so far? If you do, please feel free to ask questions, and Sean can stop me at any time. All right, staying safe, what you need to know. We talked about this a little bit.
Got one real quick, James.
Oh yeah, sure. Go ahead, Sean. I'm sorry, I can't see
And this
you,
might
so.
and this might be, yeah, as they come in and as we're talking, I'll go ahead and stop you just so we get these answered, and you or Brian can jump in. But this is an
Sure,
excellent
please do.
question. And I just want to kind of jump in and say, there's new stuff. I love to learn new stuff, and I'm learning new stuff here today. So this is fun. But the question is, where do you dispose of the gloves?
Yeah, I mean, what we've done is we've set up little specialty trash cans, right? So when those gloves go in a specialty trash can, you tie it off, and it would go with you to the narcotics burn. Maybe that's overkill. There's really no specific information about how to destroy fentanyl. We're still doing it the conventional way at the incineration facility, and until we get word that that's a no-go, we're just going to continue down that path. But it's always nice to have turn your gloves inside out as you take them off, put them into your waste receptacle, and then save that waste receptacle to go on the burn. Okay, hopefully that answers your question. So again, just to reiterate, the nitrile gloves, double pair of nitrile gloves, and then take the outer layer off after you've placed the primary package in the secondary package. I can't stress that enough. If you're able to, wash your hands immediately after handling narcotics with cold water, and avoid using alcohol-based hand sanitizer, because this is just a direct path into your bloodstream. Okay, so if you did have any residual, you're gonna open your pores up, and you're going to introduce the fentanyl directly into your bloodstream. It's going to get you an exposure. Okay. The ways of getting exposure, accidental exposures can be ingested, so you can accidentally eat it, inhaled through your nose, or absorbed through the skin. And trust me, from what we've seen, we've had a couple exposures at our agency already. Luckily, none of them have been fatal. And I'm sure Brian will get into that a little bit more at the end, but it happens so quick. Exposure through the skin is not going to be as quick as if you got it in your mucous membranes of your nose, your eyes, and so forth, but it happens very fast. And sometimes folks don't even have an opportunity to get help beforehand. So always keep an eye on your partner. We'll talk about how to handle this, like how to handle your intake areas, how to handle your lab runs, how to have Narcan in your storage areas close to your vaults and so forth. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, but I just want to make sure that if you don't have Narcan in your agency, now's the time to really push for it and get some. Like I said, the onset exposure happens very, very rapidly. Symptoms can include difficulty breathing, drowsiness, sedation, disorientation, pinpoint pupils, skin rash, and clammy skin. So those are some signs. If your partner drops out after he's handling narcotics or been in that area with narcotics, you have a pretty good shot at knowing what it is. Primary treatment is naloxone, or more commonly known as Narcan. Always have Narcan available. And just like I said before, your intake area, narcotic storage, your lab runs. You may even have to take a look at how you do lab runs, the type of containers that you transport in. We've really modified the way we handle narcotics a lot in our unit. We've created some bins, some specific red fentanyl bins that we use. We always put them during the transportation process. We always put them on a cart. Luckily for us, I mean, our lab is across the hallway, so it's not as big. But I feel for folks that have to drive somewhere with fentanyl, especially by yourself. So you want to do everything you can to keep yourself safe, to put that in a containment unit, like in a tote. Make sure the tote's sealed. Put the tote in the trunk. anything you can do to distance yourself from that, but yet still maintain proper chain of custody and control over that item is it could potentially be a lifesaver. All right, so we're going to give this. Sean, do you think we can run this video? See if we can give it a shot.
Let's try it.
All right. This is the head of the DEA.
And I think we failed.
Okay. No good?
Unless he just moves like this and doesn't speak very much. But yeah, I think, yeah, folks, for you watching at home, one of the only kind of downsides of the webinar platform that we're using is you can't play videos. And we've learned that the hard way. We were hoping against hope that it would work, but I think we've really confirmed our suspicions here today. So we'll figure that out on the fly, and we can just kind of move to the next one.
No worries. This video was put out by the DEA's office. So for the head of the DEA to make a video warning law enforcement about the dangers of fentanyl is a big deal. And I think that this video really brings a lot to the training. It adds credibility to everything that we're saying, especially for those agencies that really haven't seen it or haven't been plagued with it so far. It's out there, and he talks a lot about, you know, how to keep yourself safe as well, and even hearing from some officers about their exposure and how quickly it happens. So if you get a chance, just take a look at it on your own through YouTube or whatnot, or send me an email, and I'll be happy to share the link with you. All right. So now we're getting towards the evidence side. Now we've kind of helped the guys in the field stay safe and eliminate the presumptive testing. We've kind of walked you through the booking process like 15 times now, but it's all good. We walked you through the booking process. Now we're going to talk a little bit about, you know, what's going to happen in your unit. So obviously, you want to establish your chain of custody, and that's from the time of collection. Comes in chain of custody. Next is what we talked about. No longer are you conducting presumptive testing. Yeah, marking. I guess we kind of talked about this already as well. You want to make sure you mark the item as possible fentanyl, and that's something that your field officers would do before even bringing it into the office. That way, if there's an issue on the way back to the station, the responders, medical responders, can see, hey, maybe this is a fentanyl accidental exposure. You got it sitting on the front seat, and the envelope, the evidence envelope, even though it's not tagged yet, would say possible fentanyl. So just another indicator, something to do in the field. Ensure proper packaging. Your packaging guidelines, something that you want to make sure you have in your packaging manual. Make sure that if you're enforcing a right of refusal process on fentanyl or on narcotics themselves, that you have it written in your packaging manual. That way you have a leg to stand on if you have to enforce your right of refusal policy. And then last but not least, and one of the most important things for us, is store your fentanyl and narcotics in a separate, secured, alarmed, ventilated, which is one of the key elements there, and preferably monitored location within your property room. I say keep fentanyl separate. We have our own reasons for doing that. I know it may not be feasible for every agency to keep your fentanyl separate, but by having it separate, not only are you able to maintain a good eye on it, so to speak, and kind of have your statistics, but also to keep yourself safe if there were to be some kind of natural disaster or fire or flood. Let's hope that never happens. But if you have an earthquake, you want to make sure that if anything falls, let's just show you. Let me just skip to showing you and then submit for lab analysis. That's always a really important thing. If you don't know it's fentanyl, you get to the lab, have them analyze it, and then they'll have their own process for sending it back with indicators on it. So here's what I was talking about on the left side. Instead of having your narcotics just sitting on a shelf where they're exposed to, to fall off the shelf and bust open, we're talking about like the larger items, kilo-sized items or bigger, like you see on the right-hand side. And these pictures on the right-hand side are actually items that have come right out of our shop. We have close to probably 400 and some pounds of fentanyl currently in our unit. So we want to make sure that we take every precaution that we can. And the one thing that we've come up with are these red modular totes on the left-hand side. So if you notice, they're contained inside of each tote. The gravity holds the lids down so they won't fall out of the tote. And then also it's on a rolling cart at the bottom. So when it goes into the vault that's directly behind it, it gets secured between two shelving stanchions and thus not allowing it to tip or move in any way. Now, could it fall if we had a big enough earthquake? Yeah, it probably could, but the likelihood of the narcotics popping out of the lockable totes is a lot less likely to happen. Okay. Any questions so far, Sean?
We did have one request to share
Sure.
some of the videos on the Facebook community forum, so we'll
Oh,
look at that.
absolutely. That's a great idea. Who thought of that?
That was Susie Allen.
Susie, good job. Thank you. It will definitely put those up so you guys can take a look at. I always like to leave in my classes. I always like to leave you with this one video that was put out by Post. I had a little hand in helping create this video. It's less than 2 minutes. If anyone has ever, if you haven't heard of Post, the Did You Know series, these are videos that the California Post, Police Officer Standard Training, have spent a ton of time putting together, and they're all less than 2 minutes. Each video is less than 2 minutes. They're all law enforcement related topics that they like to, they promote as showing in the briefing room to get cops talking to each other before you go out in the field, because we all know sometimes these topics come and go and people just really aren't talking enough about them. So if you get an opportunity, and I promise I will put this on the Facebook, the evidence management Facebook, and I think you'll really, this will really punch you in the gut because it's a great video. So unfortunately, I'm not gonna be able to show it. Or should I just try it, Sean, just to see if it comes up for some reason?
I think
Give it
we
a
can
shot.
reinforce the point.
Oh, do you see it now, or did it freeze up on you?
It's playing, but I don't think we'll be able to hear it.
Well, a lot of
Yeah,
it's
there's no
narrated.
audio.
So.
Maybe you could just do the voiceover.
Okay,
No, I think we'll let them
be
watch
happy
it
to. Yeah,
online. It might have more of a punch if they're able to
yeah,
see it the way
absolutely.
it was
Okay,
filmed.
can do that. So just to reiterate everything, stop and think before you handle narcotics, okay? Because the safety habits that you make now, just like with your chain of custody, doing it the same way, redundancy every time, is what's going to help save lives, whether it's your life or the members of the crime lab, et cetera. So be safe. Remember, justice is blind, but property sees everything. All
All
right.
right.
Is Brian up now?
Yeah, I'll start to switch to Brian. I'll make him the presenter. And we wanted to have, I mean, obviously James's perspective from a property evidence custodian, I mean, that's invaluable. I mean, I like I said, I learned stuff here today that I had not thought about before. Now, I'm only going to admit that here, but that's good stuff. And I mean, tons of things that we should definitely think about incorporating into our operations. I'm going to start thinking about these things and how I teach, because I think it's absolutely relevant to what you're doing in your room. And these are things we need to think about. We definitely wanted to have James's perspective from a property evidence perspective, but when you really think about fentanyl exposures, if we suspect that an item contains fentanyl, we're going to do everything we can to make sure that we protect ourselves from that. But where we really have the exposure risk is not from the known things, it's from the unknown things. And that would probably be more on the officer side of the equation, when they're reaching under a car and searching a car and they open a Ziploc bag, exactly like James was talking about. I mean, that's just a patrol thing. And they're going to have to relearn some of those safety skills as they go. But that's when you get exposed. You get exposed to fentanyl when you're not expecting it to be fentanyl. And that's why the other half of this presentation and the other half of what we're talking about today is so important. Because, for years when we started teaching and when fentanyl started becoming an issue in property evidence, we really didn't have that much to talk about. Well, what happens if you get exposed? And there's only really one answer. there's only one way to protect yourself from an opioid exposure like fentanyl or any other opioid exposure. And that's why we wanted to bring Brian on today to talk about naloxone. I've actually seen this in the field. I wrote an officer a commendation for saving the life of a guy, and then as proof of life, which you kind of had to do at our agency to prove that the guy actually saved a life, I used the fact that he was able to arrest the same person 12 hours later on a separate drug charge. But we worked an overdose, and the guy was just graveyard dead, like purple, not breathing, dead. I mean, like dead. And you know, the officer breaks the door down, starts doing CPR, and calls the paramedics. The paramedics get there, and we had never even, I mean, we've heard of it, but we'd never seen it in action. And I mean, it was like magic. So today we want to do a magic show, and we've got Brian Quigley here to discuss that magic with us. So I'm going to change the presenter.
Hey, Sean, while you're doing that, I just want to make one more comment. You know, fentanyl is becoming so popular now with not just your street people, your street drugs, and the typical people that you're usually arresting. I'm trying to be sane and not saying anything too disparaging, but we're seeing it more in everyday people. We're seeing it overdoses with the soccer moms who have joint pain, or the student athlete that gets hurt and now gets introduced to opioids through his doctor. So all these people, even senior citizens now that are having the hip replacement or something, they start taking the opioids, and then that parlays into the illicit drugs, the counterfeit pills and so forth. So um, being out in the field is a crazy place, because if you roll up on a person behind the wheel and you don't know what's going on, the first thing that we need to think now is overdose. So it's not just the street people anymore, or a homeless population of drug users.
Absolutely. It is pervasive. Brian, I'm having trouble finding you to give you the screen. Uh, it shows unknown on your screen. Can you click something on your end to make it come to life?
Let me see here. Hang on one second.
And while we're working on this is actually also intentional. This is a great time to start typing those questions in as we uh, intentionally slow things down here to change presentations awkwardly. We planned this. This is kind of how we rehearsed it. We like these pauses. We just think we just believe it adds a nice dramatic touch.
Absolutely.
Are you able to see me
Also,
now?
oh, can you see him? Also, I wanted to make mention that uh, what we've been seeing, at least in Orange County, is just that a lot of simple possession charges for fentanyl are just getting a slap on the wrist. The longest I've seen anyone with simple possession is 90 days in jail, and that was after extensive arrests for the same thing. So we really try to unite together, and this is kind of right up Sean's alley with talking about working with your association to try and introduce legislation that would allow us to eliminate fentanyl as soon as it came back from the crime lab. And there's really no reason to keep it other than the prosecution of the case. But once we know it's fentanyl and the crime lab has already tested it and shown the report and the toxicity, it should go. I mean, that's just a no-brainer. Why keep something that can kill you 20 times over in your evidence room? But until we get final legislation to amend the health and safety code and so forth, we still need to keep it and treat it as all the rest of our narcotics.
All right. Well, here's the fun thing, Brian. We invited you here. We promised you could use your presentation tools. We just flat lied to you. So if you want to start talking about Narcan and naloxone and what you do and what you're about, unfortunately, they're not going to have the screen, but they'll have the information and they'll have the knowledge that you can impart here.
Of course. And what I will do is I'll get with James and I'll see if I can give him some open source information too. That way he can make it available to the group.
Absolutely.
Just so that just give my little disclaimer up front. The information I'm going to provide is predominantly for Orange County. So if you do have any questions about how to get Narcan for your agency, my recommendation would be to contact your county EMS, county healthcare agency, go through your individual agency to request the training material and additional supplies. So I can tell you firsthand that I wish I had Narcan when I was a field officer for probation. The main reason why is because I'd say out of my caseload of 120 high-level offenders, maybe 119 had drug problems, and out of those 119, 118 were polysubstance to include opioids. So the big thing about Narcan is understanding that it is a tool. For putting on my safety cap, as a safety specialist, the first order of business is always identifying hazards. And as James mentioned quite eloquently, fentanyl is a very big hazard for staff working in evidence, for officers in the field, for individuals working in crime labs, even individuals who are transporting evidence from point A to point B. So I'm getting a little feedback loop there. Did I mess something up?
I'm getting it too, but I don't see you. So go ahead. I'll mute everybody else.
So as I was saying, the first step is identifying the hazard. James mentioned that fentanyl is 100% a hazard for those respective classifications that I mentioned. So the next step when it comes to the safety process is, can you remove the hazard? And as James and anyone who works law enforcement could know, we would love to remove opioids from a hazard, but unfortunately we live in the real world, and that's unfortunately not possible. So the next step is mitigation of safety of the actual hazard and trying to reduce the risk. We do that through engineering controls, through admin controls, through PPE. James went through several engineering controls which you can put into place to make evidence rooms more safe. He mentioned PPE, the nitrile gloves, the respirators, the face shields when applicable. So Narcan is just one of those extra tools which more agencies should have, in my opinion, which can help reduce the risk in cases of accidental exposure, and not just for staff working in evidence, but of course the officers in the field, healthcare providers in the field. It's a good tool to have. I wouldn't say it's like I worked with a partner who had allergies, and first thing he told me before we hit the field was, "Hey, my EpiPen is in this pocket if I go down." And as James mentioned, hey, the Narcan is in these containers in case. So that communication is key. So going back to Narcan, James already mentioned opioids, but it's important to know, as I mentioned, that Narcan is a tool, and it's a tool that was created in response to an ongoing and escalating risk in our communities. In Orange County, California, to be example, there was a 10% increase in cases where Narcan was used between 2014 and 2015, with over 1,067 noted in 2015. Between 2012 and 2016, Narcan administrations as a whole rose by 75%, and at the same time there was a 79% increase in opioid mortality rates. So the need for having Narcan on hand is definitely there. And the topic of this conversation is fentanyl. That's case in point on why Narcan is important. So when it comes to Orange County, this Narcan started after the county EMS signed a standing order, which basically allowed the EMS agency medical director allowed for the use of Narcan as an optional skill for public safety first responders, provided they receive training and are issued proper equipment. So it all starts with a piece of paper, and in this situation, it starts with the standing order SOFR01 from OCEMS, the medical director, which was signed back in 2015, revised in 2018. Now, when it comes to Narcan, I'm just going to go over some of the highlights. Narcan temporarily blocks the effects of opioids, and it typically works within 1 to 3 minutes. It could last 30 to 90 minutes. However, the key there is temporary. Now, Narcan in its current, more commercially available packaging, where you have the little plunger, you stick up the person's nose, it comes in a blister pack of 2. The reason why those were created was so that it eliminates any risk of needle stick. And once again, as a field officer, I could tell you needle sticks were a very big hazard in the field, so anything we can do to eliminate that is key. And that's why the current Narcan packaging was designed to reduce that risk. It's not complicated, it's convenient. Like I said, it's administered through the nose, it's painless, it doesn't require shots. The packaging, which most of it comes in, includes two doses. It's important also to include gloves and PPE, of course. But the packaging itself is pretty robust, so long as you store it within an area which is between 60 to 86 degrees Fahrenheit. In other words, don't leave it in the trunk of your car. It will storage in extreme temperatures, of course, will cause prolonged effects, negative effects to the actual Narcan. If you have any questions, let me know. But another key tip here is, just as I guess one of the questions which was brought up was how to dispose of gloves. Narcan, the way the current applicators, so I'll put it in the box and you can toss it in the trash, so long as you keep it away from kids. So it's very, very convenient. Now, right about now is where I would be going. I would be playing you some videos on what to look for, signs of an overdose. Technology being technology, I'll go ahead and send the link to James so that he can include that. Just know that the videos that I would be playing, they are open source. They are available on YouTube. They're from California Department of Public Health. And the other training video I found was actually from the manufacturer itself. So I'll make sure to get those to James so that they can be uploaded for your viewing pleasure. But the key here is recognizing the symptoms of an overdose and understanding when you need to use it. Narcan is not one of those things where, hey, I think I've been exposed, I'm just going to go ahead and take a dose right now just to be on the safe side. That's not how it works. It won't hurt you if you do it like that, of course, but it's not how it's supposed to. It's not how it's supposed to work. So you administer Narcan in the event of an overdose. When this is beyond the nodding to more of a heavy nod, this is the non-responsive situation. This is the slow heartbeat, slow pulse, fading in fading completely out to black. The key there is that if you could ask for Narcan yourself, you don't need it. The time when you administer Narcan is when you are down, when you run across someone who is down. That's when Narcan is administered. If the person is still conscious, of course, contact EMS, get first aid out, get paramedics down there right away. But if you have a situation where an exposure happens and the person drops from a suspected opioid overdose, you administer Narcan immediately. The packaging includes a quick start, quick guide, which goes over the steps of administering Narcan. The key here is always to use universal precautions, whether you're in the field or anywhere. And then this is where I usually mention the 3 priorities when it comes to use. Always remember the safety of the scene. Always remember your safety. What I mean by that is personal protective equipment and also safety of the patient. In evidence setting, the scene safety is important, but at the same time, I'm pretty sure you're pretty safe in your own evidence room. PPE, of course, and patient safety, of course, but if you're in the field hanging off of a cliff, it's probably going to be pretty difficult to administer Narcan. So going back to actual administering Narcan, as I mentioned before, the quick guide has full instructions on how to position the individual, and this is once again after you've determined the Narcan needs to be administered. Laying the individual flat, opening up the airways, placing a hand under the chin to lift up the airway to make sure that it is open, positioning the Narcan dose in the nostril, and depressing the plunger. All that's covered in the Quick Start Guide and in the training videos, like I mentioned. Once that's done, you put the individual in the recovery position to ensure that there's no obstructions in the airway, and so that recovering individuals don't accidentally choke on vomit, which can happen. And of course, ensuring the medical personnel have been requested or en route. So just going over a couple of the highlights. And like I said, I usually will be giving you death by PowerPoint and some videos right now, but keep on rolling. Narcan is only to be used for unconscious, unresponsive, not breathing, or barely breathing patients that you suspect are having opioid overdose. It isn't prophylactic for incidental exposure. If you can give it to yourself, you probably don't need it because once again, it's for unconscious, unresponsive, not breathing, barely breathing. If it doesn't treat for overdoses for alcohol, for cocaine, and other substances, and the only potential hazard associated with is allergies, which is very, very, very rare. From another safety hazard is that once you administer it, you also need to be careful because recovery time could be quick, and right away the individual could be experiencing withdrawal symptoms. If you're an officer dealing with someone in the field, but you just have to be aware that the recovery could be pretty quick once administered. But I will of course provide James with all of the links for training material. That way you could refer back to it. And keep in mind, this is just an overview of Narcan. I can tell you that the process for being able to issue Narcan in Orange County is you have to go through a full training, which covers a lot of what I just went over in more detail. Then you have to take a practical exam. The training has to be logged, and then at that point you can start issuing your equipment. It's also important to note that once training is completed, there is a biannual refresher course, which also has to be completed. Once again, this is for Orange County, not for. I can only speak for Orange County, so check your local rules and requirements. But a biannual refresher is also required. And then, of course, it's important to maintain inventory, review your supplies to make sure whatever you have isn't expired, and that the equipment that you do have is properly taken care of. Like I said, don't leave it in the back of your trunk. So I think I covered pretty much everything on Narcan. Did you have any questions?
Let me look, and I just want to kind of hit two things really quick that might be of use,
Go for it.
especially if you're in California. I know that we had some discussion. I can't remember if we put the information on the Facebook forum or not, but in California, there's still an active program where agencies can obtain naloxone from a manufacturer at no cost to the agency. I'll search for that. I might not be able to find it this afternoon. It might be deep in my email, but if you're in California, I know I got some email correspondence and saw some connections happening, and that program still exists. So that's California specifically. There are probably other states where that exists. If you work in a state or you live in a state or you're serving in a state where there is a state-related program, if you would put that on the evidence community forum, that would be helpful because there might be an agency 2 miles down the road that's not aware of that program. But just to kind of recap, at most agencies, there are probably 3 requirements to getting Narcan in place and ready to go at your agency. One is that memorandum of understanding from a medical provider or a health agent with the municipality or with the county or with whatever jurisdiction you're serving in. The second is an SOP. The third is rolling out training, specifically user training to the officers, and then having a protocol and a procedure written and documented that people can follow, and then deployment in the field, and then the refresher training. So that is all really important. And this stuff, I mean, there is no business reason for not putting naloxone out in the field and not having naloxone on your person at all times, because we live in a world where, and it's not just fentanyl, it's any opioid. There is an opioid epidemic. I mean, painkillers, any opioid, this stuff can counteract those effects rapidly. So we will encourage you to continue to look for that. So a couple of questions. How do you train your officers and evidence staff on Narcan administration? How does that work at in Orange County?
James, do you mind if I take the lead on that for safety training? I can't hear him. I'm assuming he's saying
He
yes.
doesn't mind. We can't hear him,
Okay.
so he doesn't mind at all.
So for once again, this is Orange County. I can't speak for other jurisdictions. So everything starts with Orange County EMS once you've established your program within your agency. Program administrator is named. Trainers go through the train the trainer program through county EMS, and then in-person training is completed for staff who have identified hazard or risk. Training is typically done in person. The materials are provided by county EMS. I supplement them with additional open source videos, but the training material and the criteria is provided to you. You then complete a participant test to make sure that you didn't fall asleep in the class, and that you understand the use scenarios, you understand the policies for your agency, which I did not cover, but there are policies, and then like I said, there are the refreshers, which happen every two years. So it starts with the county EMS. Program is created at the agency level. Trainers, administrators, and trainers are assigned. Staff are then identified. They receive training in person, and then once that training is completed, then Narcan can be issued.
All right. I think that got one more question here. And if there are any questions before we go ahead and type them in that little tiny box down there. We will try to get to them. But this one is an excellent question, and it's one that probably needs a little more specificity. And Brian, you might able, because you've got a safety background and a background of working with OSHA, we talk a lot about adequate ventilation. And when I teach a training class, I mean, we talk about having adequate ventilation in an evidence room, but that means something specific. So when we say adequate ventilation, what specific type of ventilation system uh, do you recommend from a safety perspective and an actual like changes per hour perspective?
Unfortunately, that's outside my area of expertise. That's a question that I would refer individuals to our county industrial hygienist. If you want, what I will do is I will make note of that question. I will get a response to James, that way you could post it up.
That sounds great. Let's do that. I do know, just as a rule of thumb, uh, OSHA has some specific standards and guidelines with respect to, positive pressure environments for ventilating, not necessarily drug rooms, but just safe facilities. But we'll get that information posted on the Evidence Management Community Forum for you at a later date. That's why you pay the price for admission here today.
Yeah, I have
So thank you. Go
well,
ahead.
I'm sorry, Sean. I just have a little bit to add on that because we went down that path already with the positive air pressure venting to a location that in our building is an 8-story building. So the ventilation had to support at a location where there would be no risk of exposure. So it's an isolated system, positive airflow pushes everything up a vent and out of the building in a location where it wouldn't cause harm. And if you don't have that ability, then you have to have specific filters that capture all the particles on the way out of the facility. Does that even kind of make sense or resonate with some of our other viewers?
Yeah. Yeah, there are two ways that most evidence rooms try to get clean circulation or circulated air, especially in drug vaults. I mean, the best is to have a positive pressure ventilation system, uh, but there are also air scrubbers that can move some air throughout your facility as well. It's really difficult for a lot of agencies to achieve that kind of ventilation because we're inheriting facilities that we don't really have any control over, and sometimes they're not able to be retrofitted with safer ventilation systems. But there are things that we can do to mitigate those, and we'll talk about those in the future. Thank you for being here. We're right at an hour and 8 minutes. Let me double check, see if there are any questions. I think everything was so thoroughly covered that we had none. Uh, Thank you, Brian, for being here. Thank you for joining us. Thank you again, James, as always, for being here. And
My pleasure.
look forward to talking with you in the future. I'm going to go ahead and push the little red button and close things off today. But next July 9th will be our next Evidence Show episode. And I didn't have a little screen to advertise it, but I think I'm going to have an episode ready for what I think is one of the coolest ways to store evidence in humankind. In the recorded history of humanity, I think this is something really cool. So we'll talk
Outstanding.
about that in episode 3. We'll be sending something out as a reminder for the next show. That'll be July 9th, if my calendar is correct, but I don't even know what day today is, so trust the emails. So have a great week. Thank you for being here. Again, thanks, James. Thanks, Brian.
My
We'll see
pleasure.
you next time.
Have a good day.
Thank you.